You think your dog sighs loudly because it's tired or lazy, but there's usually something much deeper happening in that moment. Because when your dog suddenly drops onto the floor, looks away, and releases that long, dramatic sigh, it can feel strangely human, almost emotional, almost personal. And the unsettling part is, sometimes it actually is. Most people never realize this, but dogs use sighing as a form of emotional communication far more often than we think. It's not always random noise. It's not always simple exhaustion. Sometimes your dog is expressing frustration, comfort, disappointment, emotional release, or even emotional dependence without making a single sound beyond that breath. And there's one type of sigh that reveals more about your dog's emotional state than almost any other behavior. We'll get to that later, because once you recognize it, you'll never hear your dog sigh the same way again. Have you ever noticed how different dog sighs can feel depending on the situation? Sometimes your dog sighs while curling up beside you peacefully. Other times they sigh after you stop petting them. Sometimes they stare out the window first. Sometimes they collapse dramatically onto the floor after waiting for attention that never came. And somehow, you instinctively feel those sighs mean different things. That's because they often do. Dogs may not speak human language, but they constantly communicate through body posture, breathing patterns, facial expressions, and timing. Humans focus heavily on words, while dogs focus heavily on energy and behavior, and sighing sits right in the middle of that emotional communication system. A relaxed sigh usually happens when your dog feels safe. Their muscles loosen, breathing slows, and tension leaves the body. In those moments, the sigh is closer to emotional release. It's your dog saying, without words, I can finally relax. That's not just breathing, that's trust leaving the nervous system. But then there's the other kind of sigh, the one most people misunderstand completely, the disappointed sigh. You've probably seen it before without realizing what it was. You stop playing too early, you ignore them while scrolling your phone, you don't react when they expected attention. And suddenly, they sigh loudly and turn away. Most owners laugh because it feels dramatic. But what nobody tells you is that dogs can experience expectation frustration too. Not in the complex, existential way humans do, but in a simple emotional prediction sense. Your dog expected connection, stimulation, food, affection, movement, or interaction. And when that expectation breaks, emotional energy has nowhere to go. So it leaves through behavior, sometimes through pacing, sometimes through whining, and sometimes through sighing. That's why certain sighs feel almost painfully relatable, because emotionally they are. Have you ever noticed how your dog sometimes sighs while lying near you, even when nothing is happening? No excitement, no stress, no obvious reason, just silence. And then that deep breath. Most people miss the hidden meaning there. Dogs are social resting animals. They often regulate their emotional state through proximity to trusted individuals. Simply being near you affects their nervous system, which means sometimes that sigh isn't boredom at all, it's decompression. Your presence lowered their alertness enough for tension to release. And honestly, that changes the emotional weight of the behavior completely. Because your dog is not just existing beside you, their body is responding to your presence biologically. That's why dogs with separation anxiety often sigh differently when alone versus when near their owners. Their breathing patterns shift based on emotional security. And this is where the topic becomes more serious than people expect. Because sometimes loud sighing is not emotional comfort. Sometimes it's emotional conflict. A dog that repeatedly sighs while pacing, avoiding eye contact, or showing low energy may not simply be relaxing. It can signal stress, anxiety, confusion, overstimulation, or emotional withdrawal. That's the danger of reducing every behavior to personality. People say, oh, he's just dramatic. But sometimes the behavior is communication hiding in plain sight. Dogs cannot explain emotional discomfort verbally, so they externalize it physically. Changes in breathing, changes in movement, changes in engagement. And most owners never notice until the behavior escalates into something bigger. That's why understanding subtle emotional signals matters so much. Because dogs rarely jump directly from calm to crisis. There are smaller warnings first, quieter signs. And sighing can become one of them depending on the context surrounding it. But here's where things get even more emotional. There's a reason dog sighs affect humans so strongly. It's because they sound emotionally familiar. Humans sigh when overwhelmed, disappointed, relieved, exhausted, emotionally drained, or comforted. So when dogs sigh in similar contexts, our brains naturally project emotional meaning onto the behavior. And strangely enough, we're often not entirely wrong. Research shows dogs evolved alongside humans by becoming highly responsive to emotional synchronization. They adapted to human social patterns better than almost any other domesticated animal. That means many of their emotional expressions overlap with ours in ways that feel eerily understandable. Not because dogs think exactly like humans, but because living beside humans for thousands of years shaped how they communicate with us. That's why a dog's sigh can feel so personal, even in complete silence. And now we get to the most important sigh of all, the one we mentioned earlier. The sigh that reveals everything. It's not the sleepy sigh. It's not the post play sigh. It's the sigh your dog gives after trying to get your attention and failing. That quiet emotional withdrawal changes the meaning completely because in that moment, the sigh becomes resignation. Your dog approached for connection, interaction, a response. And when nothing came back, the body releases emotional tension the only way it can, through disengagement. Most people think dogs stop caring quickly. They don't. Dogs are attachment driven animals. They continuously monitor social feedback from the humans they bond with. And attention matters deeply to them because connection itself became part of survival through domestication. So when your dog sighs and slowly lies down after being ignored, that behavior may carry far more emotional weight than people realize. That's not manipulation. That's emotional adaptation. And honestly, once you start noticing it, it becomes difficult to ignore because suddenly those dramatic sighs stop feeling funny all the time. Sometimes they feel sad, sometimes they feel loving. Sometimes they feel like your dog is trying to say something without having the tools to fully express it. And maybe that's why humans connect so deeply with dogs in the first place. Not because dogs are human, but because their emotions leak through behavior in ways that feel raw and honest. No masks, no pretending. Just visible emotional responses happening in real time. So the next time your dog sighs loudly across the room, don't dismiss it as meaningless noise. Look at the timing. Look at the body language. Look at what happened right before it. Because that sigh may be comfort, frustration, exhaustion, trust, disappointment, emotional release, or a quiet attempt to connect with you. It means more than people think. And once you understand that, even the smallest sounds your dog makes start feeling like conversations that were happening all along. You just never knew how to hear them before. If this made you see your dog differently, then you're probably starting to notice something most people spend their entire lives overlooking.